Hello, my name is Catherine Attard. I'm a professor in mathematics education at Western Sydney University, and I'm the president of MERGA, the Mathematics Education Research Group of Australasia. Welcome to this panel discussion on why the Australian curriculum needs to change. During the discussion, please post any comments or questions in the chat function and we'll respond to them as you listen to the panel. So this panel session is being conducted against a backdrop of curriculum renewal, which, as would be expected, has caused some contention amongst a range of stakeholders. This contention has also been exacerbated by attention from the media, who have promoted the debates into what they perceive is now a maths war. While there have been many subtle improvements to the suggested new curriculum, the current debate revolves around the increased emphasis on the proficiencies, namely problem solving. Previously, the Australian curriculum listed the proficiencies, so problem solving, fluency, understanding and reasoning, separately to the content elaborations, which meant that in some cases they were largely ignored or perhaps given cursory attention by teachers. The reviewed curriculum sees these proficiencies embedded into the content with the intention that teachers can no longer avoid or disregard them. This has resulted in what some perceive as a new emphasis on problem solving and a binary view that teaching will either be completely focused on problem solving with a lack of focus on explicit teaching of mathematics content, or completely content focused with emphasis on mastery of skills, which is what some are arguing for. There's also an argument based on cognitive load. If students are effectively left to their own devices within a purely problem-solving based approach, and the focus on teaching is on generic skills, how will they manage to learn the content that perhaps should only be taught through explicit teaching and drill and practice? Teachers have a critical role to play in providing quality explicit instruction, which takes into account cognitive load theory, but students also need time to explore and compare alternative problem solutions and to communicate their mathematical reasoning. We need a balanced approach. Other arguments relate to the quality of the problem solving and the open-ended nature of mathematical investigation that are being suggested within the curriculum, as well as arguments relating to the moving around of content from one grade to another. The thing for us all to remember is that these arguments are not new. They occur every time we have curriculum renewal, and perhaps they will never be resolved, and we will never have a perfect curriculum. So if we circle back to the topic of this panel, why the mathematics curriculum needs to change, perhaps we should be reflecting on what's not working at the moment, what could be improved, and how the delivery of the curriculum that we have plays out in Australian classrooms. What I'd like to talk about is student engagement or disengagement with mathematics, which is a significant factor influencing student achievement. Of course, curriculum has an impact on engagement, but more importantly, it's how that curriculum is translated and enacted, and the practices that embed the curriculum that more directly influence student engagement and achievement with mathematics. Students are engaged with mathematics when maths is a subject they enjoy learning, when they value mathematics learning and see its relevance in their current and future lives, and when they see connections between the mathematics learnt at school and the mathematics used beyond the classroom. Student engagement is much more than students being compliant or on task. It's about students being in task. So students who are working hard, thinking hard, and feeling good about the mathematics they're learning. It's also about teacher engagement. Teachers thinking hard, working hard, and feeling good about the ways that they are teaching mathematics and valuing the mathematics that they're teaching. So how do we improve student engagement? Our curriculum, and more importantly, our teachers, need to be provided with opportunities. They need to provide opportunities for their students to achieve success within a classroom culture of challenge. We also need to ensure that our teachers are fully equipped to teach mathematics. They need continued professional learning opportunities to develop their own deep knowledge of the mathematics itself, how to teach that mathematics, and how students learn mathematics, including the misconceptions that are likely to develop. We need our teachers to be confident users of technology, and the technology they use needs to enhance student learning and the teaching of mathematics content. Whatever curriculum we land on in Australia, must support teachers to deliver excellent learning experiences for our students, to enable them to be confident and competent users of mathematics in their present and future lives. We need mathematically able citizens, and a curriculum that addresses the needs of contemporary students should be able to support our educators to make this happen. I'm going to now hand over to Kristen, who's going to give you her perspectives on a changing curriculum.
Thank you, Catherine. And yes, my name is Dr. Kristen Tripet. I am the lead for the Resolve Mathematics by Inquiry project, which is based at the Australian Academy of Science. There's little doubt that mathematics is central to today's society, and it's our responsibility to ensure students are mathematically proficient. And regardless of which side of the debate you're on, the debate that Catherine has mentioned, we share this common goal. We need to develop mathematical capabilities that students see as powerful and genuinely useful, and this will happen through engaging learning experiences that offer students opportunities for exploration, explanation, and creativity. This has been a long-term goal of mathematics teaching. It's not new, and the goal is evident in our current curriculum and is further emphasised in the draft revised curriculum that was released more recently. As Catherine's already mentioned, mastering mathematics involves intertwined but different types of proficiency, and our current Australian curriculum in mathematics identifies 4 of these proficiencies: conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, problem solving, and reasoning. A 5th proficiency was identified in a report called Adding It Up, which was published by the National Research Council in the United States. And this proficiency was productive disposition, which is that willingness to learn mathematics and expecting the mathematics to be useful at school and also out of school. All 4 proficiencies that are in our current curriculum and productive disposition must be a focus of classroom teaching, and there is evidence that Australian achievement within each could be improved. In the review of the current curriculum, Akara noted that the separation of the proficiencies and from the actual content of the document gave teachers little direction on how to embed the proficiencies within the classroom. And this has resulted in teaching that focuses primarily on mathematical knowledge and procedures without sufficient attention to reasoning and problem solving. So it's fair to say that for Australia today, problem solving and reasoning proficiencies need to be our highest priority. But having said this, I also want to say that focusing on reasoning and problem solving does not prescribe a pedagogical approach, which has been a criticism of the revised document. Now, I am the lead for a program called Resolve Maths by Inquiry, and certainly our resources that we produce promote inquiry, or what I believe is actually a more helpful term, a problem-solving approach to mathematics. I think in debates around different pedagogies, there's been some very unhelpful and untrue dichotomies that have emerged about problem solving in mathematics. The first of these dichotomies is that explicit teaching and problem-solving approach cannot and do not sit together. I certainly advocate for explicit teaching practices. However, the place, the prominence, even the type of instruction may differ to other pedagogies. Our resources generally have problems up front as an opportunity for students to engage with the mathematics in the process of sense-making, and then instruction is needed following the problem solving. The 4 proficiencies of the curriculum summarise different aspects of mathematical achievement, and any good mathematics program will include these different types of learning for a coherent and balanced program. The second dichotomy that I believe is unhelpful is that of teacher involvement. Some claim that in a problem-solving or inquiry approach, it means that students lead and the teacher takes a back seat. There are very open, student-led interpretations of inquiry, but I believe this only has a very, very small place in a mathematics classroom. A teacher who implements well a problem-solving approach to learning in the classroom is often more active and engaged in student learning than with some other pedagogies. The teacher is responsible for guiding student thinking, questioning and prompting, and also determining the instruction that is needed. The final dichotomy that I want to challenge is that of acquisition and application of knowledge. That is, problem solving is purely about application of skills and not about the acquisition of knowledge. Problem solving is about both. At Resolve, we encourage the use of tasks that promote problem solving and reasoning, which is echoed in a publication from the National the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics in the United States. And their publication, Principles to Actions, is a book that states that tasks that promote reasoning and problem solving are necessary for deep learning. And they cite strong research evidence that shows that student learning is greatest in classrooms where tasks consistently encourage higher level student thinking and reasoning, and least in classrooms where the tasks are routinely procedural in nature. We want students to be creative problem solvers and critical thinkers, so we absolutely must give broad and regular experience of doing this and help students to learn from the experience. It's also interesting to note that in certain high achieving countries in PISA and TIMSS, such as Japan, China, Singapore, teachers spend considerably more time working through and exploring one or two rich problems in a lesson rather than on busy work, many simple problems, which is more typical in Australian classrooms. And these sorts of problems focus on skills applied only in routine situations, and they're frequently done without genuine cognitive engagement. So while I have said that I am looking at problem-solving approach in mathematics, I also want to say this is really important as a focus in our curriculum, regardless of your pedagogical beliefs and practices, and it's such an important inclusion in our curriculum today. I'm going to pass over now to Darren, and Darren is a teacher, and I'll let him introduce himself. Thank you, Darren.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, everyone. Yes, I work as a numeracy coach in schools, and I was quite interested in joining this panel and sharing what I've learnt in recent years working in my role, and also listening to our speakers who've got a wealth of knowledge in the area. And I just wanted to add in my thoughts about some of the changes that are happening in the Australian curriculum and how it affects people in classrooms. And basically, I'd like to start by talking about the proficiencies and how happy I am that there is the integration of the old proficiency strands into the mainstream content areas of mathematics, because there has been a bit of a pattern, I guess, where when teachers are under the pump due to time pressures, that they will concentrate on the C-level type questions that they have to cover in their curriculum that's needed for the assessment, and sometimes the depth of problem solving and reasoning activities are left off the cards as an extension activity and not given the time that it deserves. As Kristen mentioned, other countries do spend a lot more time on problem solving, and as you probably know, Singapore, it's their central theme, and I see that the changes that are happening to our curriculum has quite an exciting move in that direction. And so I guess I would like to see an increased need for reasoning, because for me, reasoning is the proficiency that's the least understood and given the least amount of airtime. Problem solving has been around since the days of Polya, and I think teachers are well aware of the C-plan, do and check process, and in fact their grandfathers probably were. But I think we've moved on to a stage where, you know, we're talking about integrating technology into problem solving now, and technology is becoming a greater part of our lives, and we need to future-proof our students, as Catherine alluded to in her talk. And so we need to do that by integrating reasoning and problem solving into skills so that they can transfer their skills from one topic to a new context. Now that transfer only happens if it's integrated into everyday learning in the classroom, and we need to make that part of the DNA of teachers moving forward with the new curriculum. So I see a couple of key things that need to happen once this process begins in the classrooms. And one of the ways I see it is the dichotomy with the explicit teaching versus the investigation style. And having done my Masters of Education in maths, but teaching through mathematics investigations, I obviously have a lean towards that style of learning. However, I can appreciate, having seen what happens if that approach is used in the classroom, that students forget content from the previous year's curriculum. And so I think we need a process of explicitly reviewing content from previous years on a regular basis. And I think that's an important part of the approach that we need with the curriculum moving forward. There's some aspect of reviewing, and of course explicitly teaching skills is a must, and but there needs to be adequate time given to the reasoning processes that are required, and that relates to disposition, as Kristen mentioned with the 5th disposition. So students really struggle with mathematics disposition, as we know, and one of the ways we need to do that is to find engaging activities to grab our students, and so we need to find aspects of technology to bring that in. With the game medium, our students love games online, so we need to be aware of that and try and transfer some of that. The other aspect is to think about metacognition, because if students are aware of what their brains and bodies are doing, you know, there's so much we know now about the human brain, and every time I bring up a fact about the human brain to classes, they're quite fascinated because they have one. So I think that part of the curriculum needs to be integrated so that they understand what's going on and how they're thinking. And also another key component that I'd like to see emphasised is the mathematical language and cognitive verbs, which are now becoming more prominent in conversations in PDs, and basically bringing in the idea of accountable talk in our classroom, so students can justify their thinking clearly using the correct mathematical vocab. And so having a problem-solving thinking process, formulating the problem. In Queensland we have our assessments with headings, assignment headings of formulate, solve, evaluate. That sort of thing is happening across the country, I'm sure, in different forms, and that needs to be a way, just headings on a assignment to bring up as what I see happening in schools in the near future and being discussed. Happy to be here today and to talk to you about these topics, but I think I've run out of time, so I'm going to pass over to Allan, who's going to sum up our sessions for you. Thanks, Allan.
Thanks, Darren. Hi, everyone. My name is Allan Duggan. I am Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Association of Mathematics Teachers, and a maths teacher myself. Spent time teaching maths both in the UK and here in Australia, and I'm really glad to be here and talking with you today. And look, I probably will touch on lots of what Catherine, Kristen, Darren have already said, and try and open up a little bit of a conversation amongst us all. And I think for me, the last few months have shown that there are lots of passionate people out there who want to talk about mathematics education, and that's fantastic. And I think the important thing to remember is that we all have the one desire, which is to strengthen learning outcomes for our young people, to make them competent learners and users of mathematics. And I think one of the things I want to touch on and unpack a little bit is that space of knowledge, that space of content, because I think that there has been this sense of conversation that says it's content or problem solving. You either have a really firm understanding of content or you become a really good problem solver. And for me, there's a real misunderstanding of that phrase problem solving, if that's the view that we have, because the reality is that we cannot problem solve without having a firm base of knowledge of content and knowledge of an understanding of content. And we've missed that word understanding out of the journey in some respects. We have this knowledge conversation, we have this problem solving conversation. In the middle of it, that bridges it, is the understanding and that space between it. And for me, we have had a journey in education where content in mathematics has been the driver. That knowledge has been the driver. And I think what we are talking about here is, how do we actually go on a journey where we create a need for the content and the knowledge through the circumstances and the environment that the young people are in. The reality is that we know that we need young people to be able to walk out of schools and be adaptable, resilient, and responsive to the challenges that life throws to them. We've lived in an unfamiliar situation for the last 18 months or more, and the need for us to be able to problem solve, to adapt, to evolve really rapidly is important. And so for me, I think the point, before I kind of open up the floor and try and have some conversation here, the point that says we have to do explicit teaching, direct instruction, or problem solving is the wrong conversation. And it's a conversation that is creating this perception that we're at war with each other. We're not. We want to see student outcomes improve for young people. We want to see young people be effective users of mathematics. And we could have a conversation all day long about where content should sit in curricula. And we would never all agree, because we all have different views and perceptions and kind of views of how the learning should be constructed. Learning is not binary. Problem solving is not binary. It's not problem solving, or it's a really important rich mix. And for me, the conversation about how we integrate technology that adds value to the learning and teaching is incredibly important. The conversation that talks about how we empower our teachers to enable effective learning and teaching and transferability in our classrooms is key. And those are the conversations that I think we should be having. How do we help to implement something in our classrooms rather than A or B? Because for me, I'm very much a view of a toolbox approach to learning and teaching. What's the best tool in my toolbox right now to pull out and use? And I'm critically aware of time. I'm critically aware that we've got a real limit here. And I want to open up the floor. I've got a question. Maybe Catherine, it's been a while since you spoke. I want to throw it to you. Do you think that we have a poor understanding of what we mean when we say problem solving? And do you think that has impacted this conversation?
I think amongst the panel, we do have a good understanding, but I wonder whether teachers have a really good understanding of what problem solving is and how to teach it as well. When I talk to teachers, and I often talk to teachers in professional learning situations, I talk about teaching through problem solving. So the problems that, the opportunities for explicit teaching occur within the context of a problem. And that has the power of actually giving relevance, giving students a need to learn the mathematics, which is more likely to be remembered because they've had purpose behind it. It also makes it more engaging. And I've noticed too with this panel that we're all on the same page. We all have this idea of problem solving and the relationship between problem solving, relevance, student engagement. Darren, you touched on the idea of, revision, and that reminded me of educational theory and the spiral curriculum, Bruner's spiral curriculum. we always have to dip back and go forward, and problem solving is a perfect opportunity to do that, to revise, but also then to build on the knowledge that we have. Applying skills, transferability is really important in mathematics. There's no use learning content in isolation unless it can be applied. When we do mathematics in real life, we're usually doing it within a problem-solving situation. So, this is a really critical conversation that we're having here today, and it's really critical that we not only have it embedded and celebrated in our curriculum, but that we are equipping our teachers to be able to deliver that to students. And I think teachers are the key, to be honest. It's not really the curriculum, it's the teachers and how they, as I said before, enact it and translate it into the classroom.
And I completely agree with you, Catherine. I think that whole idea of how we create a need in our classroom for the learning, how we spark the curiosity in our young people. One of the most heartbreaking things for me as a maths teacher over the years is young people who make statements like, when will I ever use this? Or what's the point of this? And parents who come in and have a conversation at parent-teacher interviews and say, I could never do maths, so I don't expect my young person to be able to. And the reality is that we are in a world that is more reliant on mathematics than ever before. And we know that that trend is going to continue. We know that mathematics is used in almost every field of research, of industry. We see emerging fields of mathematical application. And it's not a path that is easy to navigate. We need people who are able to be resilient with mathematics and take it from that known space to the unknown space. Take what I've learned, the skills, the knowledge that I have, and apply it in unknown and unfamiliar situations. And that's where there's this balance of content knowledge, content understanding, content application, and then almost expanding it then into that unknown space. And I think that's a really, really important conversation. And I think the other thing that I probably would kind of touch on as we wrap up is that whole idea of problem solving is not binary, nor is any pedagogy in our classroom. I think that we as educational practitioners, we dip in and out of different pedagogies at different points in our lessons to meet the needs of the learners at that point in time. And I think there's this misconception that when we engage in problem solving, we set the kids off and we sit back, relax, and wait for them to come up with the answer. There's absolutely appropriate scaffolding in problem solving. Some of the most effective and successful problem solving lessons and tasks I've observed over the years have been scaffolded incredibly well to meet the needs of the learners. We want kids to be in their zone of proximal development at all times. That's what Catherine was talking about at the start with that engagement idea, keeping them in the zone where they are, the whole Goldilocks principle. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right for them. And we need mathematics. We need mathematics moving forward. Sorry, I got on my soapbox.
That's all right. I think that's a really nice way to sum up, but I would also just like to I guess, conclude this session around teachers, because we're talking to teachers today. And I think if we want to develop good problem solvers in our students, we have to be problem solvers ourselves. We have to model what problem solving looks like. Students don't just become problem solvers. We need to actually show them how, and to do that we need to engage in problem solving. We need to delve deep into the mathematics and understand the mathematics. And I think on that note, because we have run out of time, thank you for your participation today. Thank you everyone on the panel, and let's all hope that we get a good curriculum and that we actually implement it in a really effective way. So thank you everybody.
Thanks Catherine, thanks everyone.
Yes, thanks everyone.